everybody, to the Watch Along Podcast, capital T Thoughts. I'm your host, Morgan, and it has been a while. Sorry about that. But I had the busiest summer you could possibly imagine, and I had little time for my creative pursuits while working full time my my first job, and then also part time at my brewery, my second home, my home away from home. In addition to that, I had multiple weddings that I was involved in, and one of them was my own. Yeah, we started off in the spring, kicking off wedding season with my one of my good friends, best friends, Taylor. Shout out to the new Mrs. Clinton. We had all of her wedding festivities, bridal shower, bachelorette party, and her wedding in June. Everything went off without a hitch. It was beautiful. Congratulations, Taylor and Andrew. I love you guys so much. That was like one of the best wedding experiences of my life. Then moving on to my other best friend, Abby. Shout out, Abby. Her wedding, I'm not going to air her, personal business on the internet here, but after, her bridal shower, we had to rearrange things for her bachelorette party and her wedding, and now she is beginning happily her married life with her new husband, Nick. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Valentine. And then I'll let up to August with my makeup COVID wedding. For those of you who might not know, my husband and I got married 2 years ago during the height of COVID, and we obviously still wanted our dream wedding, so we had our dream wedding this past August in Maine, and it was, I'm not gonna lie to you, it was a freaking blast. We had so much fun, great road trip, great party, great friends. We were surrounded by love, and I finally got to wear my fairy tale wedding dress. I'll post some pictures on the Instagram at some point once I get them back from my photographer. So here we are. It's now October, spooky season, and we're back. We're back with the podcast, and here we are. I'm so excited to be here because we are kicking off, like I promised in my last episode, our sequels that are better than the original sequence. And with that, we are going to be kicking off today with one of the best movies of the century, Monsters University. All right, and we're going to be looking at this through the lens of why is this sequel better than the original? That's one of the essential questions we're going to be working to answer for you today. So before we jump in, I have to set the scene for you a little bit here. I am sitting here with all of my Monsters University paraphernalia. Right. First of all, I have my themed beer, which is not a Monsters University beer, but it is a themed beer. Remember how last time I said I was going to try and drink a themed drink for each of these watch along podcasts? And it didn't work out for Kingsman, sorry. But I did put some thought into it this time, and I have the perfect beer. It is called Nautical Scary Tale instead of Fairy Tale. I love it so much. This is a beer from my home base, Trapezium Brewing Company in Petersburg, Virginia. And I love this beer so much. It is a fruited sour with notes of passion fruit, blood orange, and raspberry. And it comes out purple, just like Sully has his purple spots. I have my purple beer. And this beer is super fun because it was originally brewed. This is the second time it was brewed, but the original release of the beer, it was a recipe written by the OG bartenders. Shout out to Britt, Danny, and Melissa. I love you guys. And I love you for creating this fantastic beer. And the artwork that's on the can was actually designed by Britt, who's one of my good friends. And it is a picture of a zombie mermicorn, a zombie mermaid unicorn, all put together. If you haven't checked out the picture on the Instagram yet, it's up there. Go take a look. She's amazing. This beer is amazing. And I am going to be drinking this beer out of my Monsters University mug. I'm gonna be drinking this bitch in style, let me tell you. I also have my water, of course. And what's fun about my water today is I'm drinking it out of my Scream can cup that I got at Walt Disney World. It's one of my most prized possessions. It looks like the yellow Scream cans that you see in the movie, and it's super fun because when you open it, it does this. It's great. It's just like the Scream can. I love it so much. And then I also have my Monsters University hat that I also got at Walt Disney World. Like Mike wears in the movie, and I'm trying to like situate it here over my headphones. It's not really working. But I am all decked out. I am so excited to get started with this movie. So if you don't have the movie queued up yet, it is available on Disney Plus. So take a moment and pull that up. And while y'all get ready and get settled in, I'm going to give you some background information on the movie before we get into this thing. So this movie is rated G. It was released on June 21st, 2013 in the US. And the first time I saw this movie, like I said, I want to give you guys a little frame of reference, I guess, for when I first saw the movie. I thought it'd be fun. I saw it with Abby. Another shout out to my best friend Abby. This was one of our friend dates that we went on. We first started college in 2012, so this was our first summer vacation back home with each other after our freshman years of college. And I remember this friend date so clearly. We enjoyed this movie so much, laughed and cried, and it was amazing. Okay, so this movie got $743 million worldwide box office. It was on a $200 million budget. Side note, like my last mini review, I did a mini review of the Batman. If you haven't listened to it yet, definitely go back and listen to me fangirl over Robert Pattinson because I love that man. But anyway, the Batman grossed $752 million. So, sorry. I mean, not accounting for inflation or anything, but the numbers just say that Monsters University is just that good. Alright, the movie has an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. Pretty good score in my opinion, and a 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb. It's starring John Goodman, Billy Crystal, Bob Peterson, Nathan Fillion, Steve Buscemi, Helen Mirren, Peter Schoen, Joel Murray, Stephen Hayes, and many others. Well, Siri, my girl, I was not talking to you, girl. Don't. That was weird. Anyway, fun facts about the film. This is the only Pixar prequel. Disney wanted a sequel to Monsters University since 2005, and it would have made it. They would have made it with Circle 7 animation, but that fell through in 2007. So then the Pixar version was confirmed in 2010, and then later in 2011 it was confirmed to be a prequel. There are well over 400 characters in this film with an average of 25 animated characters per shot, so that makes this the most populated Pixar film. The film was written by Daniel Gerson and Robert L. Baird. I don't know if I'm pronouncing those names correctly. Should have done more research. Also, side note, this is the first time I'm watching the movie or looking at my notes since I made them in early spring. I told you guys it's been a while, so if we're a little rough here, sorry. So anyway, this is director Dan Scanlon's featured directorial debut, and the music was composed by Randy Newman. The music is one of the high points of this movie for me, and we're gonna see why. So shout out to the artist, Randy Newman. Love that guy. Okay, so as long as we have our movies queued up here, we're gonna start here in just a second, but I just want to reiterate that our essential question, or actually multiple essential questions here for the movie. The first one being, what makes this sequel better than the original? And I have a lot of capital T thoughts on that, so put a pin in that. Another essential question, what makes a successful person, or in this case monster, book smarts or street smarts? We see two different sides of that scale, or of that yeah, I guess scale is the right word, with Sully being street smart and Mike being book smart in the movie. What is this movie trying to tell us about formal education? And what is this movie telling us about the traditional college experience? I think they nail the traditional college experience, as we're going to see. And finally, how does this movie twist the conventional Cinderella story? And we'll get into all of that later. Okay, so we're going to start here in just a second. Once I get my mouse, there it is. I'm queued up on Disney Plus, and we are going to hit play in 3, 2, and 1. All right, and we have our traditional Disney opening here, and it's one of those reanimated things. But this is a Pixar film, so we have our Luxo Junior lamp. And just a quick side note on the Luxo lamp, many variations in feature films like Cars, WALL-E, Finding Nemo use this intro, but the classic intro has been the same since the first Toy Story movie in 1995. Luxo Jr. is integral to Pixar's branding because of the short film Luxo Jr. It was the first computer animated film to be nominated for an Oscar in the category Best Short Film Animated. And in the original short film, Luxo Jr. jumps on a ball and which appears in Toy Story, the famous ball with the star, and flattens it. So this is mirrored in that logo. All right, so brilliant intro to the movie. We're immediately thrown into the monster world with this two-headed pigeon, and I love that so much. And we immediately see that this movie is populated. Our first shot of monsters, we have a school bus full of children, and we understand immediately that this is going to be an origin story. Let me tell you, I am a sucker for an origin story, particularly villain origin stories. I'm thinking that might have to be something that we do on the podcast here. Like, I'm thinking about Cruella. That movie was incredible. Anyway, oh my god, we get baby Mike. He's so cute. I remember very clearly that Abby and I, and pretty much everyone else in the theater, went like, when we first saw baby Mike for the first time. So, anyway, so this is our signal that we're going to be mainly following him and his story. And I'm not going to lie, I expected to see young Sully the first time I saw this, but as we're gonna see in this flashback, in the beginning, that we are mainly going to be following Mike. And since Sully was the main character in the original movie, I really wanted to see baby Sully, but sadly that's not something that we get. While I appreciate this twist, though, for sure, I definitely appreciate it, and we get to see a side of Mike that we didn't get to see in the original movie, and we get a different hero's journey. I'm still sad that we don't get that same thing with Sully. We do get a good handle on Sully and who he is and who he was when he was younger later in the film. But this is Mike's hero origin story, and I kind of love that. So as we're seeing the scare floor for the first time, we notice that not much has changed at Monsters Inc. Over the years, really. And so we have Mike. He just clearly wants to be a good monster so bad. I feel so bad for this kid, honestly. When we see our scarers for the first time. And this brings up Mike's undying optimism in the film, which is going to be a recurring theme. And it seems different than his pragmatism in the original film. So somewhere along the way, Mike's whole outlook on life is altered. And we're going to see that play out throughout the film. But he has this look of childlike wonder. And, that whole thing where when you're little, your parents tell you you can be whatever you want to be is very prominent in the beginning here, I guess. Okay, so another thing about the scares, like their slow entrance, that's definitely a nod to the original film. Love that so much. And we just saw the MU hat for the first time. It's for me symbolic of dreams in the film. And the color blue is expressively used throughout the film to represent goals and aspirations. We're going to see that a little bit later on. Side note, though, on colors using expressively. Green is used thematically to represent the heroes. I mean, there's a reason why Uzma Kappa is green and Mike is green. And then also red. Red is used to represent obstacles. And as we're going to see later, Aurora Omega Roar is red. Dean Hardscrabble is red. So there's that. So we get, we also get the Fear Tech and MU rivalry established very early on. Sorry, that was going backwards a little bit. Mike just slipped into the human world for the first time. Oh no. And this is definitely a defining experience for him as a kid and also as a monster. He gets to see something in action that, most people don't only see like in the scare simulators and stuff. So he is having a unique experience for a child really right here. Okay. So, the creepy crawly music thing that we just heard is so amazing. And we're going to hear that later. That's just another nod to my personal nod to Randy Newman because he's incredible. Okay. The Scream Canister. I have a whole thing about the Scream Canisters, but I guess I'll put it in here. I just knew there would be an internet black hole on this, so I did a deep dive on the Scream Canisters, and I found an article called "The Scare Science Behind Monsters, Inc." by a blogger podcaster named Naturalish. The theory isn't that monsters are after the screams themselves, as they are able to replicate the sounds of human screams in the scare simulator and in TV commercials for Monsters, Inc. Plus, the monsters themselves scream a lot. So that made me think like, why do they need screams then? So auditory power has been studied since the 1900s, most notably by Nikola Tesla, but the density of the energy contained in auditory power is very low. So instead, monsters are after the emotion behind the scare. Why else would there be institutions of higher education built around the psychology and emotion manipulation of fear? Keeping in mind that the human brain produces enough energy to power a light bulb when we're awake, it's safe to assume that the brain activity once, like someone is facing a heightened emotion like fear when you're screaming or elation when you're laughing, could be the basis of the energy theory in the monster world. So that was my internet black hole. I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed also that beginning montage with the Next Level Genius soundtrack. Marching band themes classically college. We also get an electro dance track later in the film at the frat party. And this is the first Pixar film to feature that genre of music. We love that. So, Mike arriving at college. This is iconic. He looks a little bit more like we expect him to. He sounds more like we expect him to, but he still has this air of childlike wonder. And I have a question. Why does Mike arrive to college on a bus? Nobody arrives to college on a bus with 2 suitcases and a backpack. Whatever. According to denofgeek.com, Mike's parents were originally developed as characters, but they were dropped to simplify the story and put the focus on Mike's arrival at college and being independent. And I do personally like this. When my parents left from dropping me off at college, that's really when it set in for me that I was playing at an adult, and I was alone for the first time in almost adulthood. So it's definitely a very monumental moment. So Mike takes his first step onto campus, and that little theme shows up rather often. And I just love the differentiation of monsters in this universe. It's like definitely a subtle hint to the college experience where you meet people outside of the demographic that you're in. I mean, like the underwater monsters we just saw have their own area of campus. We saw a giant monster. We see monsters of all different shapes and sizes. And I love that so much. Like, the imagination that went behind that is crazy. Enjoy my beer here a second. Okay. And we get a nod to the original movie with Mike's ID picture, and he says, "I don't believe it," and you think he's going to be disappointed that the picture missed him. I love that recurring joke. That button always gets me. Okay. Okay, we have a play on the peppy freshman orientation, getting your student ID, their campus tours, the club signups, and I just have to take a moment to appreciate the campus. It captures everything that is quintessentially college. The brick buildings, the brick road, the frisbee and the quad, the hacky sackers, the skateboarders, just even the classrooms look exactly like they would. The dining hall is not in my experience exactly what I would expect, but still really good. I especially really like the sidewalks that like zigzag everywhere, but then there's still like the cow paths through the grass that people have obviously like cut between sidewalks. I think that is just an incredible little addition there. I love it so much. Um oh, lost my spot in my notes, sorry. The buildings. The hidden faces and eyeballs and horns in the buildings around campus are a recurring thing. Side note, if you look closely inside the buildings on campus, you can see meters and pipes in which the scare energy is stored and transported, which I think is really interesting. And the shape of a trapezoid is a motif that was integral in the film's architecture. The university gates, the building designs, the furniture, the shapes of the bricks on the buildings, and even some monsters' body shapes. They used a trapezoid for a lot of that, which I think is interesting. Okay, so we're getting introduced to the scare games, which is going to be a Chekhov's gun for later in the game. It's like you can't mention the games without them coming up later, but we kind of forget about it along the way. And so Mike gets his room assignment, and he is heading into the dorm for the first time. And I just want to say that these hallways are rather crowded. I know it's move-in day, but those hallways are never that crowded. And oh, his roommate. This is gonna be your best friend for life. And oh my god, it's Randy Boggs. And Randy is totally not like we expect either. So we have that same thing with Mike. We have like we have the benefit of knowing where he ends up. So it's like, ooh, how did he get there? So we're boggled by the fact that he's kind of nerdy for the moment, and I just love that he introduces himself as a scaring major, and like everyone in college always introduces themselves by their major, or if you don't, that's like the first question you ask at parties. And oh, Randy loses the glasses, and that's where the squint comes from. I love, like I said, I love a villain origin story. So, I am totally envious of the dorm room window view that we're going to see in a couple frames here. But freshmen never get that kind of view. Mine was the parking lot. um, and I just can't wait to get started. I love that line. See, there's that view I'm talking about. You never get a view like that as a freshman. But as we can see, we see the hidden horns and eyes in the buildings. Get a quick glimpse of that, and now we have the first morning of classes. And now we have our slug guy who never makes it to class, clearly, because he's so slow. This poor guy, he has to start like a year before he has to be somewhere. Okay. I do think that gag just goes on for like a beat too long, though. It's for the same reason. I don't like some of the jokes in shows like American Dad, like the button gets dragged out, and it's like you're sitting there staring at it for just 1 minute too long. No, not a minute, but a couple seconds too long. You know what I mean? Okay. So I love the ritual of touching the statue on the scaring school steps. I love that the claw they always touch is shinier than the rest. Like, you know how when you touch brass it becomes shinier. I love that. And these lecture halls are never this pretty. This classroom is like the classic it is the classroom. Is the classic Pixar homage of A113, as we can see when Sully enters in a minute here. This classroom is A113. The scoffs that Mike get from the bigger monsters makes you wonder how he got accepted as a scaring major in the first place. And I guess, is this a hint at how testing scores are the biggest factor in college acceptances? Like, because we know Mike definitely scored high on their equivalent of the SATs and got accepted in that manner, but in such a practical major, how, like, is he expected to excel, I guess? Well, we're in Scaring 101. I never had an intro course that was numbered 101. Anyone? Is that just a cultural thing that we've accepted, but it's not actually real? Like, I had 100 level classes, but they were just 100. Like I'm thinking of Cass 100, English 100, but I don't know. Okay, Dean Hardscrabble here. We got this wyvern, cockroach, centipede amalgamation of a creature, and she's voiced by Helen Mirren. And she's her character was inspired by an Amazonian centipede, and I found that the Pixar team kept alive one of those on hand during her development, so that they could study the way that she is supposed to move and all of her many legs and stuff. I love that. I don't think the movie would be the same if she were a man. I mean, this character was originally supposed to be male, but they switched the gender to counteract the imbalance that there were no major female scarers in the original Monsters Inc. And I really just don't think it would be the same if she were a man. We expect female teachers and deans to be a little bit more nurturing, but her prejudice against monsters who aren't scary go against this generalization. Ah, this lighting brilliance. Dean Hardscrabble was always backlit, and then Sully kept it, and he was backlit too. I love that. And they're both set up as obstacles then that Mike is going to have to face. Kind of love that. And also, okay, just going back just a sec to Dean Hardscrabble's exam at the end of the semester. If they don't pass, they'll get kicked out of the major. My question is, why bother accepting freshmen if they might get kicked out after a semester? That's kind of fucked logic if you think about it. But whatever. So, Sully. I love his hair. And he's obviously this cool guy. And his hair is different than the original. He has like the whole swoopy, gelled up look going on, and I think it's really funny. Okay, so we have Silly Week. No one is home studying. Almost everything here is quintessentially college, but not modernized because we haven't really seen any tech or laptops yet. No online components or anything thus far. I just have to mention in their dorm room these little background catches that I have. Mike's side versus Randy's side. Mike's side has a Frank McKay poster, and that's the dude who gave him the hat at the beginning of the film. Makes sense that he would be a hero figure for Mike for his whole life after that. Slug Thompson, I Want to Scare You, the Rosie the Riveter illusion. Meanwhile, Randy has a poster with his famous line, "The winds of change," from the original. It says, "Shh, do you hear that?" on the bottom, and I love that so much. And Randy's bedding looks weirdly like a skin texture. That's real weird. Alright, anyway, so now we have the Fear Tech rivalry being capitalized on here. And Archie the Scare Pig was roughly inspired by director Dan Scanlon's Japanese chin named Carol. And so, that's a really good shot there. You can see the Winds of Change poster. And this is now something I also didn't really deal with in college. I mean, we dealt with rivalries and everything, but like no one ever tried to steal a mascot or anything. So, but I love this little gag with the pig. I don't know. I love him. Okay, but also, this leads us into Greek culture, which we're gonna see in a little bit, and our best friends are introduced for the first time. I just have to give a little shout out to Pixar animation right now. Pixar animation is always so on point. The details and textures alone are like literally mouthwateringly gorgeous. Sully on his body alone has 5.5 million hairs. And fun fact, each frame of the film took an average of 29 hours to render. If one single computer with one single processor were tried to render the film, it would take over 10,000 years. So yeah, animation better be good. But now here we go. We are going into Rush Week, and that's what I was just saying a couple seconds ago about our Greek culture being introduced and capitalized on. And it's like, yes, there are going to be like the frats that everyone wants to get into, but also this culture of the scare school is the best school in the university is not something that I ever experienced. I imagine it's different for monsters, but it's like you would think, I don't know. I was just about to start talking out my ass, but I'm gonna not do that. Anyway, so what was I trying to say? I guess I was just trying to say Penn State is so big that not really one school or one frat really ruled the school. But anyway, so we um, have this intimidation factor. Um, we're introduced to Frat Row, which I love all the decorations like on the buildings, all the string lights, and how the buildings kind of look a little crappy, worn down because it's all the big meaty guys, like, taking care of them. Um, and now we are introduced to Roar Omega Roar, which is going to be like the king on campus. And this kind of sets up Roar as, the big guys on campus. And it's also the golden era of the scaring school. And this, I can only imagine, has changed in the universe. Like, leading up to Monsters at Work. We know that scaring is obsolete. It's laugh energy that's what's used. And I can only imagine that these frats that are like focused on scaring become obsolete within, I don't know, however long Mike and Sully are at Monsters Inc., like 10, 15 years. You know what I mean? Okay. So, this is a great moment to mention. Is it natural talent and an affinity for certain things that makes us good at them, or is it putting in the work? Sully just proved that he is naturally good at scaring. He naturally has the look. And even in this first class here, he is praised by his teacher because he obviously looks scary. Or is it putting in the work, as we're going to see over this montage of the fall semester coming up, that Mike is the one who puts in the hard work? So, at what point is hard work not enough? We obviously admire Mike for being so determined and, studying every day, counting down to the exam, hitting the books, but he's just not scary. And we have also that dramatic irony, the benefit of the dramatic irony, knowing that Mike doesn't end up as a scarer. Mike ends up as Sully's coach. So at some point, we know that this dream has died. It hasn't panned out for him. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes on, because we see that he's working so hard, and why is that not going to be enough? Football games. I have fond memories of college football games. Obviously, I went to Penn State, and sitting in the student section was a wild experience. It's something that I wish every day I could get back. And the marching band, the just the energy. I miss it so much. I can't even put into words to describe how incredible it was. Alright, so we see Mike and Sully competing in everything. Classes, at the gym, all that. The leaves are noticeably changing outside. If you take a glance out the window there, you can see that the fall semester is going on. And we have Sully here. He's like, oh yeah, I did great. And meanwhile, Mike got an A+. But Sully has a C-. The C's get degrees, baby. I gotta think that the Roars aren't happy with Sully's grades just based on their facial expressions there. So that must mean that they get good grades in their classes, which is a thing to admire, but they're also dicks. So I don't really know. They have the reputation for being the best, but maybe they also need to get good grades to show for it. I have no idea. But okay, Mike has noticeably improved. So we're leading up to the scare final here, and Sully's natural talent is kind of making him fail. Not fail, but he is relying on one thing, just like the teacher said, one scary face does not a scarer make. I love getting into the scare final. I love the guy with all the different eyes on the books and all the guy with a coffee in each hand. That's really funny to me. Okay. So Johnny says, you need to start delivering on that Sullivan name. And Sully's face, right here. Sully's face after hints at his really deep insecurities that come out during the climax of the movie. He's the classic guy who puts on a front but always worries he's not good enough. So I never really sat practical exams like this. Um, Practical exam meaning it's more performance based than on paper. And those are usually used to measure a candidate's performance in the field. And I never thought this was a thing for freshmen. Um, Mostly freshman years for gen eds, prep courses, you know. Um, the only one I can really think of that are early are music and theater students, and correct me if I'm wrong. Um, but mostly exams are pen and paper for the first 2 years of college, at least. Okay, so the exam begins, and we see that it's probably not going to be as easy as they think. We see the scare meter on the side here, and everyone's doing their last minute cramming. And Sully, instead of doing the adult thing and doing the last minute cram sesh like everybody else, he is going to decide to be a dick and throw Mike off his game instead of worrying about himself, I guess. But Randy really had the right idea of just telling Mike to move. So it makes me wonder how Mike's life would have been different if he'd stuck with Randy as a friend. Would Randy have gone sour? Probably not. Again, we have that dramatic irony benefit of knowing how things turn out, so interesting to see that. And what is about to come down here, we know nothing good can happen of their little mini competition on the side here before their exam. Dean Hardscrabble is watching them basically have a pissing contest, and the beats, like the comedic beats with the scream can, are brilliant. The pauses are so on point. It looks like it wasn't about to fall, then it hits the ground, but nothing happens. Then it explodes, and it's just perfectly timed. I love that so much. Okay. I also have to oh, that final beat then before it explodes. All of it's so good, and we just know that Dean Hardscrabble is going to have something to say about this. I just don't think we would have expected her reaction to be that bad. I wish I could be just like Randy and disappear in that moment. I need to mention a fun fact that I found. I'm looking at all the monsters in the background and how horrified they look. The average number of eyes per monster is 3.7, and I need to know who had the time to do that math. But I love it. I love that the average number of eyes per monster is 3.7. Okay, so we have Dean Hardscrabble singling out Mike and Sully, and she's not even going to let them do the scare simulator for their test. And she immediately rules Mike out. She's seen enough, and then Sully doesn't even let her finish and just roars, which was a dumb idea. Don't cut off the dean of your college like that. So Dean Hardscrabble launches into this tirade about how keeping him would be a risk to life as they know it, and I love the irony of that Sully's love for Boo various years down the road actually does destroy life for the monsters as the world knows it. And I just have to say that I think the dean's judgment of Mike is so harsh. After Sully storms off, she just says that he lacks something essential to being scary. He's not scary, and she's so selective, which I get. For a university level, the performance of, or the ability to perform the expectations of the major is a big thing, and the reputation of the college is based on the graduates that they produce. So I get that she's being highly selective, but she's also just harsh. And that is also the last time that Sully tries to hide behind his family name. The rest of the movie. And at the end there, Dean Hardscrabble says, "Surprise me," and that comes back in a big way. So we have our semester change, the bleakness of January after the holiday break. I love the grayness of the shot that we just got of campus, and it really does capture the depression of January coming back after winter break. I love that. So we need to imagine those conversations that Mike and Sully must have had with their parents explaining that they got kicked out of their program. I feel like us getting Mike and Sully in a vacuum without their parents is a great storytelling device. This is very much a personal journey, and um, we know that those conversations must have happened over the semester break, but we don't get to see them. We just see their personal struggle, and I kind of really love that. And there we are. The Chekhov's gun of the scare games comes back. We kind of have forgotten about it in the fall semester craziness. But Mike is hyped because he has now figured out a way that we're going to see here play out that he thinks might win him back some favor in the scaring program. So we get the Greek scare games come back into the mix, like I just said, and it's set up against as the frat row background, and it's these big houses that you could tell were once really pretty, but the frat boys have ruined them. Again, we get a better look at them in the daylight than the party on frat row during syllabus week. All right, and of course, Dean Hardscrabble was the founder of the games. How could it be otherwise? And if you notice, I like the background catches in this scene because it's such a big scene with the whole cast of characters. Not the whole cast, but a big chunk of cast of characters. And we have all of the Greek names, and we're going to dive into that a little bit later. But behind Mike, it looks like it might say Delta, Slugma, or Sigma, which is like in the movie supposed to be Slugma, Delta. And I can't tell. It might be Lambda. I'm going to hope it's Delta, though, because it's even funnier because those letters would spell D-E-D. Dead. And it's so funny. Just like take a glance behind Mike. It looks like it says D-E-D. And now that I'm looking at it, it's probably actually Lambda. Because that would be L-E-L, which doesn't spell anything like all the other frat names spell what they're supposed to represent, I guess. But anyway, my question is, when did Mike pledge a fraternity? If he spent the fall semester studying for the scare final, or did he just like randomly decide that day that he was the brother of Uzma Kappa? I mean, we do get his Greek initiation later, so I guess he didn't rush Uzma Kappa. He just kind of grabbed these guys and decided that that was his team. And oh, I hate that line. We count bodies, not heads. It makes me so sad for Terry and Terry, who, I mean, we're going to be formally introduced to them in the next scene. I'm going to circle back to this, but like when twins aren't recognized as their own people, that makes me so sad, and I think that's kind of the point of their character. I think each of the Uzma Kappa brothers represent like a fringe group of people on campus, so we'll get into that in just a minute here. But we get this classic comedy of frenemies, the unlikely pairing of these two people who don't like each other. They're thrown together, neither one of them wants to be. But Mike needs Sully on his team to complete it. Sully needs Mike because of this deal. He is just struck up with the dean. And if they win, they get back into the scare program. And that's ultimately what we want for our main characters. And we know, again, the dramatic irony, we know that Sully is a scarer. We know that they work at Monsters, Inc. later on. So is this the path that they take to get there? So, scene switches. We have Mike and Sully moving into the OK house, the Uzma Kappa house. And it's definitely a mom's house, but it's all green, like we talked about earlier, symbolizing heroes. And the thing with the disco ball cracks me up every time. Okay, so here we are. We have an Uzma Kappa brothers breakdown here for you. So their strengths are introduced subtly in this scene. And like I said, they all kind of represents fringe college personalities. So we have Don Carlton. He's the mature student. He's a salesman. I love Don. I am a Don stan. First of all, I love his accent. And this man, more importantly, he represents the non-traditional college student. He has a business card that reads 1200 Dark Avenue, which is actually a nod to Pixar's Emeryville campus at 1200 Park Avenue. We have Terry and Terry, the twins that have never been without each other, obviously. And this emphasizes that right here that they are two completely different people, but it's already been established that they're always lumped together. And that kind of makes me sad for them. We have Art. Art is the stoner, criminal, mysterious misfit that we're like, why is he in college? He's this new age philosophy student, and I think he represents the majors that are like, okay, so like, what do you want to do with that degree? He's the only named character who doesn't have a last name, fun fact. Then we have Squishy. He's a townie. He represents all of our undeclared students. He's actually has this really great scaring ability to creep up on people and startle them, which is established right here in this scene. It's going to keep coming back until it becomes apparent that that's his strength later on. So Sully, they're admiring him, and I love that he says like, "Oh, I don't even work out," but we saw him and Mike at the gym during the fall montage, which is interesting. But anyway, I have a question. How many bedrooms are in this off-campus house? I mean, at least 4, right? You have to think that Mike and Sully share, so that's fun. Squishy and Dawn probably share, let's be real. Art and Terry probably share. And then there's Squishy's mom. So we have at least 4 bedrooms in this off-campus house. That's Squishy's mom's house, and she is single, as we find out later on. So that's a big house. My house only has 3 bedrooms, and one of them is my office. Okay. So we are now moving into a Greek initiation sequence. And I have to say that Greek initiations are like so weird and ceremonial. It's like one of those things that I never really questioned when I was a college student. And I can't talk about mine in detail. See, freaking up. But it was in a dark basement. It was in character, and ceremonial robes were involved. So this is really not far off from my experience, which I think endears me to the film even more. I think it's so funny, and so spot on. So paddles are actually not used for spanking, right? My fraternity, which actually technically belonged to a fraternity, it was not a sorority, because it was more business related, but didn't allow hazing of any kind, so we weren't even allowed to make paddles. But I feel like they're probably just for decoration now, right? I looked it up on the internet, and they're most commonly used now as a keepsake. That's like a gift from a big to a little, or a little to a big. But the history is obviously rooted in the hazing of Greek campus culture, dating back to the late 19th century when hazing resurgence was intensified after World War II. So the scene answers our question. Mike didn't pledge in the fall. These poor guys got suckered into his scheme. I also have to mention that there's a poster in the background of a yellow Lambo with 6 wheels, and I think that is so funny. Okay. So Mike and Sully kind of resign themselves to their fate as brothers, and they realize that they've fallen in with this really weird group of guys. So this is their first morning in the house. I have to mention I love Mike's cinder block nightstand, and this is a callback to the cinder blocks in Monsters Inc. that Sully has in his bedroom when he's first watching Boo fall asleep. I love that. So we see that as we expect them at this point in the film, they're definitely not getting along. They are not operating well in this space together. Sharing is not in their nature. So they get a little letter, and it's addressed to Uzma Kappa, and we learn, and we see, Don's sticky suction cups for the first time, and that's actually revealed to be one of his strengths later on. So this is our first event. The first event for the scare games. And we learned that they have to meet in a sewer. And in this scene, we are introduced to the other competitors of the scare games. Oh, first, if you look closely on the scare games to the left, we see the Luxo ball, and that's a little Pixar Easter egg. So we learned that this is going to be a competition of a select group of fraternities and sororities who have entered. So back to the fraternities and sorority names that I said we were going to circle back to. I love that the abbreviations spell out like the niche group that each fraternity or sorority represents, and it's brilliant to keep some of the Greek alphabet the same, but sub in some scary monstery words, and they blend like the perfect familiar of Greek letters and the fantasy of the universe of Monsters Inc. And I love that. So we have Jocks, Jaws Theta Chi, Pink, Python Nu Kappa, Eek, Slugma Slugma Kappa, Roar Omega Roar, obviously Roar, Hiss Eta Hiss Hiss, and OK Uzma Kappa. Not pictured, but we also have Omega Howl, which they're not competing, but we saw them earlier in the move, so they're O. And then we have Gamma Roar Roar, which is Gur. I saw that in a background catch earlier on Frat Row. Okay, so we have these stinging glow urchins. Apparently simulate what it's like to touch a human child or their toys, but because of dramatic irony and knowing Sully's and Mike's later life experiences, this is wildly incorrect. And I need to know if the powers that be have just assimilated this belief that children are toxic into their culture, almost in a weird dystopian kind of way. You know what I mean? Like we have seen dystopian movies. The one that's coming to mind is Fahrenheit 451. I'm about to have a nerd moment here, but the government has decided that books are bad and people having their own thoughts is dangerous. So in this universe, the powers that be have decided that children are toxic and we are not to have any contact with them, so they're dangerous. They are like being stung by these glow entrants, which is just not true. So anyway, so we see that this is going to be an obstacle course, and as the teams are getting ready to take off here, it's obvious that they're ready to go through this test together, but meanwhile we have Uzma Kappa, and it's just mainly Mike and Sully wanting to compete to finish the race first. And we have other teams like helping fallen teammates, because they definitely have the right idea of what this challenge is supposed to be. And Mike and Sully just have it all wrong. And Don getting stung in his fake cussing, like Jesus crackers, and those crack me up always. And I love the roars coming up in the background behind Mike and Sully. They look super menacing in this pink light. I don't know how you look menacing in pink light, but they do. And I just want to take a moment here to mention how bad I feel for my Uzma Kappa guys. They're obviously the nerds on campus, and they're getting the brunt of the urchins, and they're getting beat up pretty bad, and I kind of hate that for them. I love my Uzma Kappa guys, especially Dawn. Oh, I love Dawn. Okay, so my bro moment is over. Let me take a quick sip of my beer here. Mike and Sully tie, but they're all types of puffy and swollen and gross right now. But they've clearly missed the point of the challenge, because the other teams coming in behind them that are all coming together are finished and in last place Uzma Kappa, because they didn't wait for their teammates. And um, we think that it's all over for them, and Dean Hardscrabble will say here in a second that it would have taken a miracle for them to blah blah blah, but Jocks is eliminated because of cheating. And dare I say, hold up here a second. Hold up. Dare I say it? We have a 2319. We have a 2319. This monster who that's George Sanderson, right? The monster who gets the protective gel rubbed off of him and then the urchin stung on him. That's George Sanderson, right? If not, they are definitely very similar monsters. So if that's a reference to the original, a little homage, I kind of love that. Okay, so this brings us back to an essential question. What is this movie telling us about diversity and uniqueness in a team setting? So they each have these strengths, but in this scene, it's clear that Mike doesn't appreciate this yet. He wants them to behave like him because he's thinking that his way is the only way, which is eerily similar to Dean Hardscrabble's philosophy, right? Um, so they're all very different monsters, and it takes Mike a little while for him to realize that they need to operate according to their own strengths, not just according to his. So, Don's strength is his tentacles, but not in the way that he thinks. He can't sneak up on people. Squishy's clearly the talent of a silent scarer here. Terry and Terry are actually really good at misdirection. That card trick just was not representative of what they're able to do. And Art is kind of like that outlier, the weak link in my own personal opinion, but he is capable of thinking outside the box. So, we are not cheating. I'm just leveling the playing field. Comes back in a big way later. Okay, so we're heading for this classic underdog narrative. They're going to have to learn to work as a team, and at some point in this arc, it's going to seem possible. It's just not right now. And they're like even kind of heading in the wrong sort of teamwork direction under Mike's supervision. Because again, Mike is unable to see that they are talented in their own ways. He thinks that they need to be talented in his way. He just thinks he got stuck with a bunch of suckers. So we got their note for our second challenge, and we're heading into that. This is going to be more of a silent challenge, and they're going to have to make it out of the library without getting caught. So this massive workspace in the middle of the library isn't like any college library I've ever seen. It's all about the carrels. It's all about the study carrels. Come on, am I right? Like, this massive main space looks more like the student center than the library. So, someone send me pictures. I don't know. Penn State's library, it was all about the study carrels that were like up against the windows and they were like super tiny. Okay. So, they are taking literally Mike's directions to do as he does. Everyone except for Sully. And we do actually see what happens to somebody who is not quiet in this librarian's library. He gets literally physically thrown out. And that instills some fear in our competitors. So I love that shot of Terry with a Y grabbing Terry with an I's arm, like you would grab somebody else's, like when you're scared, but it's his own other arm. I just think that's so funny. Okay, so here we go again. Literally taking Mike's directions to follow exactly as he does very seriously. Sully's frustrated and is going to quickly realize that if he doesn't make a move, they are going to lose and actually get eliminated this time. So Sully takes fate into his own hands and sprints for the flag, and it's not going to end well. I mean, how could it possibly end well? Okay. I want to take a moment here while we see Sully epically fail at this, to mention that we see those hidden teeth and eyes and monster horns that I was mentioning. And I really wanted to pause and like look at some of the titles of these books at some point, but I forgot about it. So if you find anything fun, if you pause and see anything fun, you just let me know. Okay, Dawn coming in clutch to save the day with his tentacles. He said he was the master of the silent scare. Nope. He is the distraction. Oh, and then Terry and Terry are another distraction, misdirection. And Art completely untactfully is saving the day, but it's a good point. They just, they can't get caught, and as long as they don't get caught, they're gonna be okay. And it turns out that they do. They, see Eek making their way to getting their flag, and we don't know if they get it, and instead, we just run for the exit. And the suspense here is amazing. I love that the librarian has destroyed her own library in trying to catch these guys. And Squishy, everybody, coming in clutch with the silent scare from behind, and he has the flag, so they actually did it! Misdirection. And I love that. So we learned that the Eeks are eliminated. They get tossed out of the library. So, we're competition's winding down here, okay? Uzma Kappa is still in the running. Okay. And so we transition then to that night, and they're partying from their success, as they damn well should. But for me, this success it was just luck. It was them starting to learn how to operate as a team, but they haven't really clicked yet. It was just more luck. Alright, so then the Pinks roll up and invite them to a party. They should have guessed that the literal mean girls on campus inviting them to a party is suspicious. And I mean, Sully does, but Mike has those rose-colored glasses on, or rather, Python New Kappa colored glasses on, and they roll up to the party at the Roar House, and it looks like it's bumping. This representation of a frat party is in some ways spot on, and in other ways is completely wrong, in my experience anyway. Because when they roll into the party, we see, you know, the flashing lights, and this is the electro dance music that I said was the debut of this kind of genre of music in Pixar movies. But also, this is a very not crowded frat party, in my experience. And also, why are the lights on inside the main foyer? That's kind of wrong to me. Anyway. Another side note, background catch, outside the party, the Pizza Planet truck is parked outside. It's a classic Pixar Easter egg, and we love that. Okay. So, my question is, Worthington didn't put everyone up to making the Uzma Kappas feel welcome just for show at the beginning of the party, did he? Spoiler alert, the party's not going to end well, so I just want to know, like, do people who aren't in the competition actually admire our Uzma Kappa brothers, or did Johnny just put them up to it? So, Squishy trying to get Sully to dance is one of the funniest moments in the movie for me. How Sully goes along with the miming and lets himself get tugged, quote unquote, into the dance floor is great. And here we go. The music is just amazing. And then we have Mike snooping around. I am never the person to snoop at parties, and by that I mean I'm always the person to snoop at other people's houses. But we have the Hall of Scarers in the Roar Omega Roar House, and I had something I wanted to say about this. Where's my notes? Oh, there we go. The portraits in the Hall of Scarers, like, if they're references to famous portraits, I need to know which portraits they are. I don't know a lot about art, so if we do know, then I want to know that. But anyway, you can see from the plaque at the bottom of the Scare Games Cup that the Scares are not the reigning champions. It looks like Eek won last year based on where the empty space on the shot at the back of the trophy is. But Roar has won the most, it does look like. And now we break in the party, and the Roars are going to introduce the top scaring teams, and like, oh, surprise, Uzma Kappa is one of them. And just when they're in the middle of the spotlight, Worthington calls them up and says that they're the most adorable monsters on campus. After completely and horrifically embarrassing them with, I feel like a reference to Carrie, Stephen King's Carrie with pig's blood at prom. You know, the paint and the humiliation in front of everybody. And now we do see finally that Boggs is on the dark side. The reveal of him being the one to release the stuffed animals, I think, is a nail in a coffin. I mean, he has chosen the dicks, I guess. I don't know. At the time, it must seem better than his friendship with Mike. He's in with the cool guys, and that's what he's always wanted. And that most adorable monsters on campus photo, none of them look truly mortified, but Mike and Sully do look sad. I can't tell if Dawn has his hand up to try to catch a stuffed animal or try to bat them away, but I do love that Art was having a party about it. That's like right up his character's alley. And Squishy also looks like he's smiling in the picture, so Terry and Terry don't look like they're having a terrible time either. But all of the pictures on the quad and the clock tower and everything just remind me that the clock tower at Penn State was like my favorite spot. And on Fridays, this is a personal story. Fridays and Saturdays, the Penn State fight song would play, and still does play, from the clock tower. And I love that so much. Old Main Clock Tower is actually where my husband proposed to me. So, I don't know, seeing the clock tower in this movie. Gotta go that memory form. Anyway, back to the movie. We kind of like it feels like a third act breakup almost, but not really. These monsters are, so embarrassed, and they have just been told, like, oh, if you want to work at a scaring company, oh, they're always hiring in the mailroom. And Dawn even says here, like, some people are built for other things. And that's incredibly sad to me. And it goes back to that natural talent versus hard work idea. And then Mike, something clicks for Mike there. And some people aren't just cut out for the big leagues. That line kind of like makes him realize something that the others haven't yet, and he has a brilliant idea. And this is definitely a turning point in the narrative. And you know that something big is going to happen for these guys very soon. Okay, I love that Squishy's mom drives them to the back alley of Monsters, Inc. And I love that she did it without question, even though they're definitely there for nefarious purposes. And I also love that her tunes, I'm going to be sitting here listening to my tunes, and there's Screamo music, and I love that that's folk music in this universe. They're about to commit a felony. They're about to, break their way into Monsters, Inc. And I just have to also say, anybody else notice that Monsters University's logo is the same as Monsters, Inc.? And that kind of makes me wonder if FearTech and FearCo have the same logo or affiliation, and what exactly is Monsters University's affiliation with Monsters, Inc. Monsters University's affiliation with Monsters, Inc. And now we get the scare floor that we saw at the beginning of the film, and I love that we finally get to this point in the movie where Mike points out that all of these monsters are using their differences to their advantage. There's not one type of scarer. And I do want to say that the monsters that they admire so much, Earl the Terror Thompson and Carla Killer Claws Benitez, I couldn't find anything about these monsters being the same as the original, so I suppose there was some turnover at Monsters Inc. between the prequel and the original. And also, Earl the Terror Thompson, is he the scare leader? I just missed it um, on the board there. But even if he does still work at Monsters Inc. when Sully is a scarer, we know that Sully is the top scarer on the scare floor. And now we finally have common ground. We have finally found common ground between Mike and Sully, and they find it in scare cards, which we did see at the beginning of the film. The little scare car symbol or motif was introduced in the credits, and it will actually roll at the end of the film as well. But then we have this common ground is what ultimately brings Mike and Sully together, and they apologize, and they just realize that they need to work together instead of being at each other's throats all the time. But they get caught, and I love that Art says, I can't go back to jail. That obviously implies that he was at jail the first time, and I just need to know what he was in jail for. That really cracks me up. And the music here is if it's not exactly as it is in the original Monsters Inc. film, it's definitely a thematic play on it. And I just love that Sully ends up carrying everybody to the car. Art says I want to get some of that action. And we get the classic facade of we scare because we care on the building. And that's definitely a nod to the original. And as they're running to the car, what? Start the car. Stock the bar? Yes, Miss Squibbles. Yes, stock the bar, my girl. And I love when they pile in. I remember seeing this for in the trailer of the films, and like seatbelts, like drive the car. No. Does anybody want gum? No, drive. All of that is incredibly funny to me. Even when Mike takes the wheel, she does not look horrified in the least bit. And I love Squishy's mom. And Art yelling, "Let's break in somewhere else," is always hilarious to me. Okay, so then we get another little mini montage. All their frat letters are a symbol that they're actually coming together as a team now. And it's like the symbol of their renewed unity, and it's also a subtle joke about frat boys always going places wearing their letters, I think. At Penn State, at least, it was either Wednesday or Thursday. Like, everyone was supposed to wear their letters. But, and then we're getting a training montage. And Mike takes on this coaching role, and it's clear that he's good at it. And this is something that is a little bit more in our wheelhouse of what we expect from Mike. He, helping the others become better. And that just kind of reminds me of that old saying that, like, those who can do, those who can't teach. I hate that saying. I was a teacher for 5 years. I taught English. And it always made me angry when people were like, those who can do, those who can't teach. But in this case, it works because we are going to see that Mike is just still not scary, but their team is excelling now under his leadership, and he has finally realized that in order to be better, they need to be different, and I think that's brilliant. So, anyway, we just saw the third challenge. Scare the child, avoid the teenager. Art and Squishy do really well. Love that for them. The pinks are eliminated. Then we go into training for the fourth challenge, and I love that Dawn. I love Dawn. Times a million. Just period. Full stop. And Mike doesn't realize it yet, but he is helping each of them find their strengths. And I love that for him. So Mike and Sully are finally this well-oiled machine that we love from the original. And, oh, there's Dawn. I got launched against the wall. I love that guy so much. And Mike and Sully have established this working relationship. I love that we get the same shot of them in their room, but instead of struggling around each other, they just move so well together. And that's definitely what we've come to expect from Mike and Sully. So this is the hide and eek challenge. they have the hide and sneak, escape this house, and of course Boggs is good at it. You can blend in, but Sully takes a page out of Art's book and actually hides out in the open, and in a way, Mike does that too. And then Dawn's um, tentacles save him as well, and they actually come in second after the roars, and Hiss is eliminated. So we move on to the final challenge, which is going to be the scare simulator. And it's going to be their chance to scare in front of the whole school. And Mike has been waiting for this chance for a long time, really. And then, of course, we have Worthington trying to push his weight around, and it's really obvious that he is used to being this bully, and I kind of hate that. And it's never really been my experience that people who are good at what they do are cocky. I don't know. I guess I've just never really put myself around those types of people, but I kind of hate that. But when Mike says, "But when you lose, no one will let you forget it," that is the best line in the whole damn film. I love that line so much. So then, the quick catch: the tall monster behind Mike asking for advice is a scarer in the original film. Okay, so we have this seed of doubt that Hardscrabble plants in Sully, and this raises the question of how can the scare simulator get the true measure of a monster's scariness if we've been building this narrative that diversity is the key to good scaring? It kind of seems like a very prescriptive or objective way to measure if a monster is scary, which kind of brings us back to the essential question: what is this movie trying to tell us about the college experience, traditional schooling, traditional college experience? And it kind of I don't want to get on my soapbox or anything, but when my age group was growing up, we were taught that college is the way, and it's very obviously not the only way to become successful, as we're going to see later on here. So, anyway, it robs us of the opportunity to see how Mike really would have performed in the real world. And Mike actually doesn't get to scare in the scare simulator ever in this movie. So, no, we don't actually ever get to see what Mike Wazowski can do in this objective sense. But whatever. So, Sully tries to help Mike with his scaring, and we see that look on his face that tells us that he is having serious doubts about how Mike is going to perform in the scare simulator. And we have all the monsters gathering for the final challenge in the arena that is set up with the scare simulators, and we get the alma mater, and this is another thing that just brings me back to college, and I really think the last line should be, it should end in "Hail to thee," not "Hail to you." It rhymes with university, but I think that we lost that a little bit there. But anyway, there's George Sanderson again. I really think that's him. At this point in the movie, I wonder where the waterbound monsters are. They don't have a place in the stadium, and I've been going on about the diversity of monsters in this universe, but the monsters on campus that were in their little water section at the beginning aren't able to be here anyway. Okay, so we get the we get to see how everybody performs in the scare simulator, and we're going to break down each of their performances. And Dawn ends up going first. And so we have Dawn versus Bruiser. And this performance proves that complacency is the worst place to be. This is something that I learned kind of young, actually, when I was at the Drum Major Academy. Side note, with my husband, and that's kind of how we fell in love. It's kind of a dorky way to say it like that, but I feel like we grew so much as people. And one of the things that was harped on at this leadership institute is basically what it was, is that complacency is the worst place to be. Dawn has figured out how to best use his talent, which is his tentacles, and it really pays off for him. Bruiser comes in like a bull in a china shop, and his performance suffers because of it. And but I just love that he's like this meathead who still thinks he did so well. And Don uses his strength, and it benefits him, and he actually beats Bruiser in that matchup, and I love that for him. So then, oh, and then he, thanks for taking it easy on old grandpa. I love that line. And I also find it entertaining that they reset the toys in each of the scare simulator um, times. Terry and Terry's handshake is great. So we have Terry versus Chet, and Terry's performance is my favorite. I think it is much scarier than they get credit for. It's not a huge roar or anything, which goes back to the objectivity of the scare simulator, but the image, thinking your parents are coming in and it's a two-headed monster instead, I would simply pass away. But Chet still beats my guys. Okay, so we have Squishy versus Chip. Squishy gets a higher score than Terry somehow, and I'm pissed, but I mean, good for him. But he's neck and neck with Chip. So, and then we have Art versus Javier. Art is the weakest performance so far, even though he's able to nimbly move through the room, and he actually performs pretty well. Once again, objectively not scary, but he's more startling than scary, which his score suffers from that. So Javier is a beast and gets a really high score, and I mean, his scare was actually very good. And then we have Sully versus Boggs. How could it be otherwise? Sully and Boggs are competing for years after this in Monsters or Monsters Inc. So Sully is this. This is where he learns to integrate his natural talent and his book smarts. He reads the file very carefully, and he uses what he has learned in his performance. So the combination of creating the thunderous sound and the roar gets him a high score, whereas Boggs's transformation into the hearts is really embarrassing for him. But this, I think, more than anything else, is Randy's transformation into the Boggs that we know. And that transformation is complete. He says, the last time I lose to you, Sullivan. And he is the Randy that we know now, and we know that his arc is pretty much complete. So finally, we have Mike versus Worthington, and I also want to point out that Mike is wearing his OK hat here. But this is the classic Cinderella story narrative, bringing us back to that essential question of how does this movie twist the classic Cinderella story narrative. This is go time. This is 2 minutes left on the clock. They're down by however much, and Mike has to perform or they're not going to win. So, or is it? So, Mike is up against the best scarer on campus, his personal bully, I think. And even the first time watching this, I was like, no way, this is how this ends. But Mike also tries to combine his book smarts and his street smarts. Worthington gets almost a perfect score, and I just love how Chad's like, Chatty, you're my hero. I don't know why, I just love that. But we have this dramatic drawing out of Mike preparing himself for this scare, and he's hearing all of these people in his brain telling him he's not good enough, and he gives the scare of his life, baby. He gets a perfect score somehow. OK wins, and for the first time, Dean Hardscrabble looks a little shocked, and for the first time we see emotion out of that girl on the Greek Council, and I love that. But even the first time watching this, I just knew it seemed too easy. I was like, oh, that was anticlimactic. And we have this continuity error. Mike was wearing his OK hat, and then his MU hat gets put on his head at the end of the final challenge here, and they raise him up, and they're having this celebration that OK won and everything. Love that Don and Sherry are going to live happily ever after, and this is where the traditional Cinderella story, all of our favorite sports movies, end, and the underdogs have come back from behind to take it all, and we love that narrative. It's very heartwarming. and we saw that our team learned to work together and came out on top. Um, but it seems too easy. It seems too easy, and it turns out it's not the Cinderella underdog story we're so used to. And they don't pull out the win at the buzzer. So here's my question. Mike didn't get his chance to really prove what he could do, and instead he finds out that um his settings have been tampered with. So the classic Cinderella story, back to this. It always assumes that hard work alone will get you to be champions. And that's not always the case. Sometimes hard work ain't enough. Sorry about it, but it isn't. And I'm never going to be personally, like, I'm never going to be a great gymnast or a vocalist, no matter how hard I work. It's just not in my DNA. And it's all about matching your talents and your affinities to your goals. And Mike's at this point just aren't matching up. And I think this is our point in the story where he's not willing to accept that at this point, but it's starting to look him plain in the face. Even getting kicked out of school did not force his hand in the way that what he's coming to learn is who is his best friend, not trusting him with this, did. And I mean, obviously cheating was not the way to go, but Sully is basically saying that he saw improvement in his teammates and they actually performed incredibly well, and he did not want to let his team down just because Mike didn't have it. And that's really, really sad, but also admirable. He doesn't say like, oh, I didn't want to risk my spot in the scaring program because you suck. He said he put it on his love for his teammates, I guess, and that gets to me a little bit. Okay, moving on though. So you have to have a little bit of respect for Sully in this next moment here where he's getting congratulated, but he can't enjoy it because he did something so wrong. And he is not going to wait for it to come out. He's just going to go and confront Dean Hardscrabble and own up to it of his own volition. But we also have Worthington trying to get Sully back for the roars, not realizing that he has undergone this transformation, and Sully realizes it's not really about what I want. He's holding the roar jacket and the scare cup, and he realizes he needs to do what's right. And that's when he runs after Dean Hardscrabble. And that's where Sully's character, his arc has kind of been stagnant for a while, I want to say. He did learn to, work with his teammates and trust in them and everything, but his own personal growth was kind of put on hold for a good portion of the film until we get to this point where he owns up to it and he admits that he cheated. And he actually, gets kicked out of school for it, but he did what was right until he realizes something is wrong. Everybody realizes something is wrong, and there's something going on in the door lab. And there were signals here. There were red flags on Mike here that the door wasn't right. Entering, or the previous scene rather, where they were saying like, "Oh, I worked on it all semester, but something is wrong." But even when he opens the door to the human world, there's signals that it's not right. This little hallway, the worn doors like that are wooden, and the walls, the dingy metal bed, there are red flags about this experience that he should have realized. But his indignation is driving him to want to prove something that he didn't get to in the scare simulator. Didn't work. The child is not afraid of him, clearly. But anyway, I also wanted to point out something else I wanted to point out. What was it? Oh man, I lost it. I don't know. But anyway, so we see here that Mike's worst fears are a reality. He's not scary. And my question is, would he be scarier in a normal bedroom, not a summer camp? There's something significantly different about sleeping in a summer camp versus sleeping at home. And for me, like being surrounded by all those girls, I don't think I would have been as scared, but maybe I would have been more scared. I don't know. I just don't think it's not operating in a vacuum. Okay, anyway. So Sully or Squishy calls Sully James in this scene. I really didn't like it. It just hit the wrong way for me. I really didn't like it. But anyway. So Dawn tries to come to the rescue. My man Don tries to come to the rescue, and he's actually not good at distracting with the sales pitch technique, which I think is hilarious. So that part earlier where he says that they're built for other things, my ass, he was so much better in the scare simulator than just trying to distract Dean Hardscrabble. And that kind of incongruity earlier where he said that, or Don said that, some people are built for other things, like goes completely against like this narrative that we're trying to build. And I love that it played out like that he tried to play his salesman pitch and it completely didn't work. So anyway, so the animation of the human world here feels distinctly different from the monster world. And I can't explain it completely, but it does. And we've seen humans in this world before. We've seen Boo, and we've seen human bedrooms countless times. But the animation of the adults just feels different, and the woods outside this house just feels not wrong, but in a way that I can't explain. I love the difference between the monster world and the human world. Like I feel like even those canoes would be different. And we have this cliche of Mike staring at his reflection in the water. I kind of hate that. But at the same time, I can't really imagine it any other way. But it just feels very cliche and very overdone. But we're gonna ignore that. So what we have here is Mike looking his failures in the face, literally, in his reflection. But what we didn't expect, is Sully, his arc kind of continuing, and his insecurities and fear of failure, not being good enough to be a Sullivan, come back. And we have these guys representing opposite ends of the insecurity spectrum in a way. We have Sully, who's tried to own up to his name, and he's used that as a blanket, as a security blanket for a while, but he says that he is the Sullivan who got kicked out of school, and he acts scary, but most of the time he's terrified. Meanwhile, we have Mike, who is just so determined to be what he's always planned that he is unable to admit it, basically, I guess. The beer's going away, so I'm talking too much. Okay. I just have to say, I love this moment between these two guys. I think more than anything, this is what pulls them together as best friends. Like, they not only are sharing the scary experience together, but they've also shared their deep insecurities with each other. You can really only do that with a friend. And the trust between the two of them is great. And so we have this mad race back to the door, and Mike could never leave Sully behind. He helps Sully out of that bind there. And as they run back to the cabin, excuse me, we knew it wouldn't be that easy, and the door has been deactivated. And I just have to say that Dean Hardscrabble here is one scary bitch. She is. When she like flares out her wings, I want this room cleared now. You see why she was the reigning scare champion for a long time, and the room is on lockdown until whenever. And so it becomes obvious that Mike and Sully, well, not obvious, but they think they're trapped here. But Mike, always the man of action with his undying wisdom, thinks he knows a way to get them out. So Mike and Sully are about to turn this cabin into a house of horrors, and Sully is justifiably and reasonably scared because these are adults. These are not kids. They have been trained and they have been in school for scaring kids, but these are adults. But what I don't think they realize is that adults are, I mean, just as easily scared as kids, if you give them the right things to be afraid about, I guess. Um, so anyway, I have questions about how they manage parts of this House of Horrors, like the record player, the turntable turning on, the doll slamming the doors closed. I mean, how do they manage all this and keep out of sight is a good question. But honestly, if I were in there, I would give it a big nope and get out of there. Okay, so this part I think emphasizes the importance of the pre-scaring that we see in the simulator. Like it's not just one big scare, it's the buildup of that fear. And this goes back to way at the beginning of this episode here. We talked about the scare energy, and it's not the screams itself, it's the energy of the fear, because that light flickered and they weren't even really scaring yet. So here we go. The big scare is coming up, and Sully is about to pull off the biggest scare on record. And the shame of it all is it's not even on the books. If I were in there, I would be completely terrified. Face to face with that guy? Absolutely not. I'd be out. I watch a lot of those like ghost videos on YouTube. Shout out to Nuke's Top 5. I'm a big fan of Nuke's Top 5. Um, and I feel like that would make the cut. But anyway, so Sully pulls up, and we see with the screen cans that he fills up and explodes that it's the biggest scare on record, for sure. But it's not even official. Okay. He gives credit to Mike here, saying that he couldn't have pulled it off without Mike. Like Dean Hardscrabble says, she says, "How'd you do this?" And like Sully's like, "It's all Mike." But honestly, I hate that the MU hat is scorched. Sorry. Mike's dream, I think that symbolizes that Mike's dream is finally over. He's proven to himself beyond doubt that he's not scary, but this knowledge on how to be scary is invaluable. And that goes back to Sully giving him credit for pulling off that scare. And like, there we go again. Those who can't do, teach. And Sully followed Mike's guidance on that whole scare that they just pulled off, and Sully wouldn't have been able to do it without Mike. And and we have Roz for the first time. We're gonna be always watching them. I love that. So here we are at the end. Things wrap up rather quick. Dean Hardscrabble is visibly rattled, and it goes back to that time that she said that she has never been surprised, but she clearly has been. She's like basically speechless. And then Mike and Sully, we learn, are expelled. But everyone else in OK gets into the scare program anyway. And we find out from the end credits that they end up as scarers with scare cards. And I love that for them because, I mean, they were students who weren't given an ample chance in the scare program, but clearly they actually do have some natural talent and affinity for scaring. And we also find out that Dawn and Sherry are completely in love, and I kind of love that. But when Dawn pulls out this updated business card here in just a sec, oh sorry, the father and brother stepfather joke. I love it so much; it's so uncomfortable. But Dawn here pulls out his business card, and it's this updated, and it It absolutely wrecked me the first time I saw it, and I cried. I'm about to cry right now. But um, they are the scariest bunch of monsters that Mike has ever seen, and that comes back from earlier. And but these guys are more than okay, right? They are not just okay. They're the name of their fraternity doesn't define them, and I kind of love that. Um, so Mike's and we've seen changes here, and we have them leaving campus in much the manner that they have showed up. Mike's has his suitcases, and his first step off of campus really mirrors his first step onto campus, and I love that. Um, so Mike says, "I'm okay, just being okay" in this scene, and I feel for him because that's kind of how I feel in my life right now. um, I don't know where my career is going, and I totally feel Mike on that. Like, we're gonna figure it out, but you don't really have to be the best at everything. It's okay. Um, I'm glad that Mike has Sully to help him out of this funk because behind every great success is the people who helped them get there. And I think that's really special that they that they have formed this bond of teamwork and friendship that is going to carry them through their adult lives. A lot of us aren't as lucky to have that, and I mean, I have obviously my support system and everything, but um, to for someone to watch you grow in this manner and help pull you out of it, I think is really special. Um, so Mike, or Sully's trying to convince Mike that, I mean, everything has been on him, and just because he got beat down this one time doesn't mean that he should give up forever. And I totally admire him for this. Um, and then he throws in that you're not scary, but you are fearless, and those are different things in this world. I mean, there's different things in our world too, but just because one thing didn't work out for him doesn't mean something else won't. So then we finally have Dean Hardscrabble coming back and meets them on the outside of the university gates with this newspaper, and she admits that they surprised her, and that's something that no other monster has ever done before. And she I mean, she's kind of in a bind. I kind of feel her on this because she clearly wants to give them another chance, but she's kind of in a bind and she can't. Um, so she wishes them luck, and she I don't even know if she knows she did it or if she did it on purpose, but she gives them the ticket to basically the rest of their lives because this comes back from earlier in the film. They're always hiring in the mailroom. And that's it. I mean, that's not it for the movie, obviously, but like that's how we find out how they come to work at Monsters Inc. And that's where we've been going this whole film, basically, is wondering how did we get where we were? Like, we know that Mike and Sully were a team to be contended with in Monsters Inc. And like, how did they get there? And they actually started at the bottom of the totem pole in the mailroom, and I freaking love that. um, oh, we have the Abominable Snowman, nod to voice actor John Ratzenberg's role as Cliff Calvin, the mailman in Cheers. I love that. Later revealed in Monsters at Work that the Abominable Snowman was banished for snooping around Waternoose's mail, which contained plans for the Scream Extractor. So, love that. These pics in Mike's locker are actually good. His whole face is on there. I have to point that out, but it shows that they've been climbing the ranks, and we don't really know how long it's taken them to get there, but we finally have their first day on the scare floor. And Mike's first step onto the scare floor very much mirrors his first step onto campus. And I mean, not that much time must have passed because Sully's hair is still his college style. But anyway, so we end and he's happy and okay. He's not where he thought he would end up, but it's somehow better because he ended up there where he was supposed to be all along, and he ended up there with his best friend. Um, so at the end, the credits roll. We see all these scare cards. We see that Worthington and Chet end up at Fearco according to their scare cards. And isn't that weird because they went to Monsters University? I don't know what that means, but a little bit of something, something. Um, so while the credits roll here, I want to circle back to our essential questions. So, first one, traditional college experience. Can you be successful without graduating college? Yes, obviously. And that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, and I was trying not to get on my soapbox, but people in my age group were told that college was the only way. But there are clearly other ways to become successful, and I love that the theme of this story is that you don't always have to take a traditional route to reach your goals. There are different paths to success. There's no right way to do life. And I love that theme. And it's something that I really wanted to instill in my students when I was teaching. And that's something that I'm even trying to learn right now because I didn't end up where I thought I would. And we're trying to figure it out, and it's okay. What is this? What makes a person successful? Book smarts or street smarts was another one of our essential questions. I think what we've learned from this movie is that it's a mix of both. Mike and Sully are such a successful team because they work together. Mike has the book smarts, Sully has the street smarts. And they weren't successful on their own. They both got kicked out of the SCARE program. Sully thought that he could just lean into his natural abilities, and Mike thought that he could just study his way to success. That's not how it worked. They had to come together and be successful using both of their talents, and I think that's amazing. Another one. What makes this sequel better than the original? Obviously. Okay, let's circle back to our main question, our main reason for watching this. This was a sequel that was undoubtedly better than the original. You can come at me. That the music is a high point for me. There are some nods to the original score, but the themes of the marching band music just understood my soul. And I love it so much. And like I said, I enjoy an origin story. I enjoy a prequel almost better than I enjoy the original story, just because of the frame of reference that it gives us for the original. I like knowing how we got where we were, and it's there's a Latin phrase, starting a story in media res, and that's very much where I think Monsters Inc. started, was in the middle of the action, and that story stands alone as an incredible story. It's so good, but the story of how we got where we are is so much more interesting to me. Not to mention, there was how many years in between Monsters Inc. and Monsters University? Probably about 10. About 10 years in between. Obviously, Pixar's animation stepped up in that time, and I think it's brilliant. They always blow me away with their animation. And something else I didn't actually mention earlier in the podcast is that what I enjoy most about this movie is that it's more focused on that narrative, on the hero's journey, then the subtle jokes. If you go back and watch Monsters Inc., you'll see all these subtle jokes that are like parallels from the monster world to the human world. And I just love that. Like, I'm trying to think of examples. The original has like stalk, don't stalk signs, like instead of walk, don't walk. And Mike uses Sully's odorant instead of deodorant. Just does a couple things off the top of my head, but this movie, Monsters University, more closely mirrors the college experience than making plays on opposite things, playing on the monster world versus the human world. And I love that so much. Okay. That's pretty much it. I've been talking as the credits have been rolling. Hopefully, I hoped I would get to the post-cred gag, but I haven't gotten there yet. But if you continue watching, there is a post-cred gag. The slug kid missed the whole school year. The slug kid that we saw at the beginning, and he said he had to rush to get to class because he was going to miss it. He actually missed the whole school year, and I think that's really funny. Okay, that was my capital T thoughts on Monsters University. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed this watch along as much as I did. Sorry it was a little rough around the edges since we missed so much time, but I'm really hoping to be here more often in the coming months. So be sure to check back. Next time, we're going to continue on our sequels that are better than the original Train, and we are going to be watching Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest. We love The Curse of the Black Pearl, but this is sequels that are better than the original. I have a lot of capital T thoughts on why Dead Man's Chest is better than. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your